and thank you for joining me today in the webinar that's being sponsored by Retail Pro. My name is Dan Jablons, and I'm the president of Retail Smart Guys, and we are a consulting firm here in the United States, but we actually do retail consulting and planning for stores across the world, actually in 15 countries now. I'm delighted to be here with Retail Pro, and for those of you that don't know, I'm actually excited to be coming to Dubai for the first time ever in my life. I will be there for two things. There's a very special event that I'm doing with Retail Pro, a full day seminar about retailing and what a lot of the retailers around the world are doing to be successful, regardless of what happens in the economy. That's going to be in the first week of December. Hang on, I'm looking at the exact date for you. So that is going to be on on Wednesday, December 9th is when we do that course, okay? And that'll be an all-day thing. And then Thursday, December 10th is the Retail Pro Conference that's happening in Dubai. I'll be there too, and that conference is going to be filled just with tons of great information and news about Retail Pro and news about where the industry is headed. And you're going to want to come to that and bring all your friends in retail to that too. It's going to be a phenomenal event. So and I'll recap this again at the end, but the 9th will be a full day seminar with me where we're going to talk all about the important things you need to know to survive in retail today. And then the 10th is the Retail Pro Conference. All right? Now that that's aside, let's get started with the webinar here. This webinar is called Retail is Details, the sum of doing a lot of things right. And in it, I'm going to share with you 3 things that I think are really important that every retail store should do in order to improve their cash flow and improve their performance and really stay on top of their business. These are things that that I've actually seen stores do in different countries, and they are applicable no matter where you are in the world. But they are really great, important things that you can do to manage your stores more effectively and get more profit and more cash flow from them. Okay? So this webinar is actually the basis, or the basis of it comes from a book called Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell, and I recommend that book to all of you. He says in that book that you need to dig in your own backyard to find the diamonds that you're looking for. And this is never more important than in retail, frankly. There are many times when I talk to retail stores and I say, well, where is your growth going to come from? Where is your where's the next level of your business going to grow to? Where's that going to come from? How's that going to happen? And sometimes I hear that it's going to happen. Oh, well, it'll happen because I'm going to get a new line in, or I'm going to get a new location in a better spot, or I'm going to hire an amazing salesperson who's going to help me sell more. You know, I hear this all the time. The reality is that all of those things that you're talking about when you say that are things that are outside. They're external to your business. But there's lots that can be done that's internal to your business that you already have at your disposal, that if you actually did these things, you could produce more cash flow and better results. And I'm going to show you those right now. Okay? So what I'm showing you is not theory. These are actual examples from actual stores that we have worked with. Okay? These are actually their numbers and their results. You know, I'd like to tell you that it's all, you know, the genius that we provide, but the truth of the matter is that we provide the insight. These stores actually did these things and did a phenomenal job of building their business and building their cash flow as a result. Okay? A couple of ground rules before we get started. The first thing is you have to be willing to look at some key metrics. And there's that old adage, if you don't measure, you can't improve. So you've got to be able to measure what's going on there. Okay? You've got to be willing to change. So there's the other old adage with that. If you do what you always have done, you'll get what you got or less. And in recessionary times, that's especially true. Okay? And then the last one is willingness to act, make a decision, and even fail. You've got to be willing to act. Okay? Failure, like it says here, is just an event. It's not the final scenario. Okay? You got to try some different things. And I invite you, as you look at these things, to see how you might apply them to your business. Okay? First, a quick discussion of finances. This is probably stuff you guys know, but just in case you don't, it's important for us to cover it. You know, you can break your expenses down into fixed and variable expenses, right? Fixed expenses are expenses that do not change month in and month out. Typically, that would be rent, It's lease payments, it's things like that, or loan payments, things that do not change month after month after month. But then there are variable expenses like advertising, like commissions if you pay those, that kind of thing. And selling payroll is certainly one of those variable expenses. And I'm going to talk a lot about selling payroll here in a minute, okay? So if you think about your fixed and your variable expenses, these are expenses that you can manage and figure out what you can do to actually improve your expenses without reducing sales. So watch this with me for a moment, okay? I want to talk about this one stat called selling cost, and here's how you calculate it, okay? You take the total amount that you paid someone in a month, okay, or in a week, or whatever time period you want, okay, and you divide it by the revenue they generate as a salesperson. So in this first example, we paid someone $1,700 for the month of January, and in that month they sold $12,500, okay? So their selling expense was $1,700 divided by 12,500, or 13.6%. Okay, that's their selling cost. Now, actually, that's a little bit high for a selling cost. Selling cost typically runs around 9%. In more urban areas, it can get as high as 13 or 14%, but normally it's running around 9%. Okay, now watch this for a moment. Okay, here's a store, and their total expenses, both fixed and variable, are 42%, but the fixed expenses are 23%, and the variable expenses are 19%. Selling payroll was 12% of sales. Okay, and we said, okay, what if we could knock the selling payroll, the selling expense, from 12% to 10%? Okay, so we're going to decrease that by 2%, just 2%. We're not looking to, go crazy in terms of scheduling. We're not looking to make life harder. We're not looking to cut people's salaries. We're just saying, look, I'm going to reduce my selling expense by 2%. Well, watch what happens when you do that, okay? I actually converted this into the local Dubai currency, so bear with me as I go through this, okay? But so I took a store's actual revenue, I converted it to the local currency there, okay? So here's a store. They're doing $2,754,761. Okay, that's the original situation. Their fixed expenses are $633,049. Okay, and all we're going to do is change the variable expenses from $523,258 to $467,918 by lowering that selling expense by 2%. Okay, when we do that, the profit before cost of goods goes from $1,598,454 to $1,653,794. It's an improvement of $55,340 just by lowering the selling expense 2%. Just 2% produces a 3.4% improvement in your profit before cost of goods sold. Okay? How do you do it? You look at the schedule and you make sure that you're not being wasteful in the schedule. You look at your commission plans and make sure you've got an effective commission plan. You look at the base salaries that you're paying and you make sure that you've targeted your salespeople, that they have really good sales goals so that your selling expense becomes a little bit less. You manage the sales force and you look to reduce that expense by 2%. Okay? Lots and lots of techniques to do that, lots of ways to do that. I certainly am going to talk about some of those on December 9th, but the short version is better scheduling, a better commission plan, and driving sales through giving your salespeople goals and forecasts. Okay, but just by doing that, just by reducing that by 2%, okay, you get $55,000 or $55,340 in the local currency, and that's pure cash that drops to the bottom line. Okay, pure cash that drops to the bottom line. That's not stuff that just shows up on your profit and loss statement that you don't actually get to spend. This is real spendable cash. Okay. Now, one store did a little bit more. On top of reducing the selling cost by 2%, they actually gave their store manager an incentive if that store manager got a 5% growth in sales. So the example I'm going to show you now, their revenue increased by 5%. Their selling costs get down to the same 10%. Fixed expenses don't change. After all, they're fixed expenses. But your expenses as a percentage of sales still fall. So take a look at this next slide. Okay, the first two columns are just like in that last slide I showed you. Okay, the revenue in the first two doesn't change. It's still $2,754,761. Fixed expenses are the same all the way across the board. Okay, but in that third column, there's a 5% revenue increase on top of reducing the selling cost by 2%. As a result, the variable expenses go from 523,258 in the first column to 491,332 in the last column, okay? Which means the profit before cost of goods goes from 1,598,454 to 1,768,119. So the improvement there is actually another, oh, I didn't convert that one. Whoops. I'll do that for you really quick. That one actually would be 169,664. Let me go back to that, sorry. So that's, I didn't convert this one out of dollars. It's 169,664. So it's a pretty significant increase there. You actually get a 10% increase in your profit before cost of goods sold if you can actually generate a revenue increase. So the very first tweak that I wanted to share with you was reducing your selling cost by 2%. And the results are here on this slide. Okay. Oh, by the way, I know some of you are sort of chiming in with some questions here. I'm going to just let those accumulate as we do this, and then at the very end, I will answer all the questions that come up. Okay. All right. So we just did our first tweak, our first improvement, which was reducing selling expense. Here's our next one, which is markdowns. Okay. Now, markdowns, if you're like most stores around the world, it's one of your top 3 expenses. Okay. Besides payroll and rent, okay? And I've listed here what those are typically depending upon where you are in terms of whether or not you're in a very urban area or a very rural area. It does vary a little bit geographically, but mostly those are the percentages, okay? So markdowns is one of the more expensive ones there, between 12 and 20%, okay? And it happens mostly because, gee, those markdowns are just not well managed. There isn't a plan to do them, and there isn't a strategy by which you attack them. There isn't timing to them. There isn't okay, this has been here for this amount of time. Now's the time for the markdown, and how much that markdown should be. So markdowns, unfortunately, are one of the areas I find that most retailers don't do a good job of controlling their business, and if they did a better job, they would make more money. Let me show you an example of that, okay? So here we go again. Now this is based on a 55% initial markup, okay? Here's a different store, okay? But similar in volume, okay? Their original volume was 2,751,377, okay? And we said, okay, right now your markdowns are 21%. What if we got them down to 19%? As such, the markdowns that we spend, instead of being 577,790, become 522,762. We pick up a full point of gross profit, okay, which means we go from 1,252,428 to 1,279,905. We improved by 27,477, which is, again, a 2.2% improvement. Notice, by the way, in this one, as well as in the one where we reduced the selling cost, these cash improvements happened without increasing sales, okay? Look at this slide again. The revenue is the same. Okay, all we did was reduce the markdowns by having a more effective markdown strategy. Okay, well, what does that mean? What causes markdowns? Because sure, it's easy to say do less markdowns, but the way you do less markdowns is you think about what causes them, and you can really, if you look at this slide carefully, this slide breaks down into 2 areas. There's a sales component to it, and there's a buying component to it. The sales component is, do your salespeople have enough product knowledge to sell the product that's out there? Do they understand why it's there? Okay. Do they understand how it goes with other things in the store? Okay. Are they giving you feedback about what works and doesn't work? For example, is it on the floor and they're showing it to people? Let's just pretend it's women's apparel for a moment. Okay. Let's just say it's dresses. Okay. So you got these dresses that you think are great and they're on the floor, but your salespeople find that they're always being left in the dressing room. Maybe we have a fit issue there. Okay? Maybe it looks great on the hanger, but not on the actual person. And they need to give you that feedback. Okay? So it could be that your salespeople just don't understand why it's there, or it isn't working for them, or they have an opinion about it. But more often it happens because of some of the other reasons that are on this slide. We received it late. We bought beyond what the demand was. Okay? We didn't really have a good class structure. In Retail Pro, there's a department class and a subclass, and that structure really should reflect how you buy. And if it's set up properly, you should be able to use that to measure and create forecasts that will show the proper demand, that will land the right goods at the right time. Okay? Maybe you went too broad in your assortment. Maybe you have too many vendors. Maybe you have too many choices. The way people make money in retail is by going narrow and deep. And what happens is if you're too wide, then your customer gets to see too many choices, and you might think that that's a good thing, but it actually has the reverse effect. It confuses the customer and makes them less willing to buy. But if you have a very nice tight assortment there, the customer says, okay, I know what the store believes in, I know what they're about, I know what I'm supposed to do, and they buy that way. But probably most important on this slide is the lack of a markdown strategy. Okay? Do you know how long you're going to keep the goods before you mark them down? Your customer votes with their wallet. And so if they haven't bought these goods and they've been out there for a sufficient amount of time, it means they didn't like them at the price you put them at, and it's far better to take the markdown, cash out, and buy things they do want than leave them there and pretend that they're going to sell, because they're not going to. Okay? All right. So we've done 2 tweaks so far. We did the reduction of selling costs by 2%, and then we did the reduction of markdowns just by 2%. Okay? The last one is purchases. Okay? Now this is the thing you spend the most money on, is your inventory. Okay? It's why a system like Retail Pro is so important. It needs to measure your biggest investment. Okay? It's the thing you spend the most money on, so you should be tracking that very carefully, and Retail Pro does an excellent job of doing that. Okay? Now, the key components, of course, to purchases and inventory is timing it and making sure we have enough to satisfy demand without overbuying and wasting cash, or underbuying and missing opportunities. Small changes here can have a huge impact on your cash flow. So take a look here again. Here's another store, again, kind of similar in volume. Their volume is $2,758,614. Okay, and if I could do the same revenue but reduce my purchases again by 2%. Okay, it means instead of spending $1,517,238, I'm going to spend $1,462,065. It means my gross margin will be $1,241,376, or it goes from $1,241,376 to $1,296,549, an improvement of $55,172, or 3.6% in the net profit. Okay, now that's by reducing my purchases by just 2%. Okay, that said, it's important to know that you can't make a knee-jerk reaction here, okay? You have to do this on a class-by-class and location-by-location basis. Classes that have demand need to be fed. You need to make sure you are in that business, have the right level of merchandise, and that you're constantly showing something new and different and exciting, okay? Classes that are not growing, okay, just need, maybe they're in maintenance mode, okay? They need to, be on like a min-max program maybe. Or they need to be in some way that you can easily see what you've got going on there, okay, and you're maintaining it without trying to grow it artificially or without trying to kill it off artificially, okay? And classes that are dropping need repair and care. What does that mean? We need to figure out why they're dropping. Is there a reason? Is there a way to salvage it? Is there a way to turn it around? If not, we need to let it drop. We need to not chase dead business. And we need to take the dollars that we might have spent in those classes and put them into the classes where the demand is, okay? The thing we cannot do is make a sweeping cut across all classes. That will destroy a business faster than anything I can think of, okay? It has to match what the demand is. You've got to be focused on that, okay? How do you do it? Well, it begins with a sales forecast. A good sales forecast is not last year plus or minus a certain percentage. Okay, a good sales forecast considers how your business is trending along with how the industry is trending. Okay, where are things going now? Here's an example. This year in the United States, jackets have suddenly become very fashionable and are selling very well. Last year, they weren't. It's a trend for this year. If you had forecasted your business based on last year plus a percentage, you would have missed the jacket business and missed a ton of revenue and a ton of cash flow. It has to be based on where the industry is currently trending, where your business is currently trending. Okay? So you got to look at where things are now, not where they were last year. Also, these forecasts need to be by month and by location. The mistake a lot of people make is they do one big annual forecast, and then they try to meet that. They fight all year to try to make that. But that annual forecast starts to fade into the background when other current issues show up. okay? If it happens month by month and location by location, you can actually make sure that your forecasts are right, which is why the last step of this is to monitor the results, right? You want to make sure that you've planned it right, that your forecasting is good. And if your forecasting is good, great, you keep going. If it's not good, you have to adjust your future forecasts to make sure that you don't continue to make the same mistakes. That's why we say monitor the results. After you've forecasted your sales, you've got to forecast your inventory. And the key to that is something called the stock to sales ratio. Retail Pro has that embedded in what it does. So the stock to sales ratio is a hugely important, let me go back, sorry. It's a hugely important thing, okay? So you basically plan for each unit you're going to sell, how many units you're going to have on the floor. Okay, that's what it does, okay? Now, when you plan your inventory, besides planning the stock to sales ratio, you've got to think about assortments. What's my vendor assortment going to look like? How many vendors in each of these classes am I going to have, okay? And different classes require different levels of vendors, you know. Again, if we're talking about women's apparel, tops, blouses, and then those kinds of things require more vendors. Usually bottoms require less vendors, okay? What's your color assortment going to be, okay? What's your ratio of basic to fashion going to be, okay? And probably most importantly here on this one, you've got to make sure that you flow in new inventory every single month so there's something new to talk about, okay? Remember this old saying, if your customer sees this month what they saw last month, they're not coming next month, okay? Something new and different and exciting every single month is key to making sure that your business continues to grow and that customers come back and see you every single month. And just like sales planning, when we're going to plan our sales, we're also going to plan our inventory forecasts, and we're going to monitor to see if we're hitting that or not, and if we are, is it helping our sales plan or not? Okay? A couple more tips about this one while we're talking about purchasing. Most point-of-sale systems, and Retail Pro for sure is in this class, have more than just selling reports. Okay? So please run more than just selling reports. Run a receiving report to see what just came in. Run an on-order report to see what's coming in so you know what to expect. Run an inventory report so you can see what's still there and what you're offering to your customers. Okay? Those are all of the reports and selling reports. They're all vital. You really need to have a really good, vital reporting strategy. Okay? I also think you need to look at your sales versus your receiving, not just costs. That'll give you cash margin. Okay, so just a brief thing on cash margin, and I will, this is a longer topic for sure, and one that I will cover when I'm there in Dubai. But think of it this way, okay? If you spend $1,000 at cost with a vendor, hoping to get $2,500 in retail sales, okay? So you spent $1,000, okay? And your planned initial markup is 2.5 times or $2,500, okay? Now, what actually happens? Well, you only sold $1,800. Why? Because you took some markdowns and you didn't sell it all, okay? So your sales are $1,800, but you still spent that $1,000 with the vendor. So your cash margin there is $800, not the $1,500 you were planning on. Always look at that and use that cash margin to evaluate how your vendors are doing, and to develop something called a vendor scorecard. A vendor scorecard just basically says, what did I get from you, and how did it sell, and what am I stuck with? What's still left? Okay. Again, we can go into that in much greater detail when I'm with you folks in Dubai. Okay. But these are the best ways to manage vendors and to manage how your inventory is coming in. Okay. Number 4 is the thing we do whenever we start with any new client ever, is we figure out where the old inventory is and we flush that out fast. Okay. Why? Because old inventory isn't helping you in any way, shape, or form. You have cash tied up in old inventory that's laying there that has not sold. Okay, that cash should be used to buy goods that people are interested in buying. But also, if you have the same goods on the floor all the time, it's really bad for the store's marketing, right? Your customers start to go, oh yeah, there's that again. I guess they can't sell that. It really does damage your marketing, and it's also, frankly, it's very difficult for you to look at. It's difficult for your employees to look at. It's like constantly looking at your mistakes every single day. You want to finish those off and get them out of there as quickly as you can. Okay. Point number 5 is an important one: expense control. which is something people worry about, especially in recessionary times. But expense control, while important, is not a long-term strategy for growth. Okay? You'll notice that when you look at business publications, and when they talk about companies that are growing or doing something very significant in the marketplace, if there's ever an article about those companies, and they're talking about, gee, how great they're doing and what's happening, and they stop in the middle of the article to interview the person running that company, it's never the accountant. It's always someone from production or it's someone from marketing. Why? Because the accountant is there to control expenses, which is a great thing, but they don't particularly have the kind of vision usually to drive growth and to figure out where we should take the company. Okay? That's the job of planning, that's the job of forecasting, and that's the job of really making sure your purchases are all good. Okay? All right. So here we go. So let's add up all these little 2% changes we made. So each of these, if you look at it, is just a 2% change, right? We improved our selling costs by 2%. That got us $55,340. We improved our markdowns by 2%. That got us $27,477. We improved our purchases by 2%. That got us $55,172 for a total of $137,989 on the exact same volume. Remember, these were all stores that were doing, in the neighborhood of about 2.7 million, 2.8 million, around there, okay? And they all got $137,989 by doing those three things, okay? That's what we talk about when we say you have diamonds in your own backyard, okay? Because if you look at all of these things, none of them were done by opening a new store, none of them were done by finding a new vendor, none of them were done by hiring the killer salesperson, or by inventing a new marketing plan or any of that kind of stuff. They were all done by making small improvements in your existing business with the tools that you already have. Okay? Pretty interesting. Okay, so how do we do it? We start at the global level. We start running some dashboards. We help you plan, and we get into the details. And Peter Drucker has this great quote, which I always like to include, which is that all good ideas eventually degenerate into work. Isn't that the truth? Okay, so this is just the beginning. Like I mentioned, I'll be in Dubai. Actually, I'm going to fix the date on here, but it's Wednesday, December 9th, and Thursday, December 10th. The 9th is the full-day seminar. The 10th is the Retail Pro Conference. To find out more about that, please contact our friends at Retail Pro. The email is there, moreinfo@retailpro.com, and the address and all the other contact information for the Retail Pro local office in Dubai is there. Okay? All right. I'll leave that last slide up there just so you guys can keep looking at that. And then I know there was a few questions that popped up, so let me see if I can answer those. Okay, the first question is about the selling cost. Let me just read this. Give me 1 second. Okay, the question is, what do you do with longer-term employees who have been there longer? Because they're wondering if increasing their commissions will make a difference. The key in the selling cost one is that you have to when you do the selling cost thing and you start to work on commission plans. I think when you start to pay people greater commission, at the same time you have to give them higher sales goals to reach to hit that commission mark. Okay, I don't believe in commissions from the very first sale they make. I think you've got to pay them commissions once they've achieved a certain goal, and then pay them higher commissions once they've achieved that goal. And there are models that we can show you that even with that, you can still hit that same selling cost of somewhere in the 9 to 13% mark. Okay, so the answer on that one is yes, you'll pay them more commissions or you'll pay them a higher base as they mature and as they're with you longer, but that also becomes accompanied with higher sales goals. Okay? All right. Here's the next one. What if I have a department class structure that does not work for me? Okay. Well, if you have one that doesn't work for you, the answer is to change it. The good news is in Retail Pro, if you change your department code structure on an item-by-item basis, it actually goes back and changes the history too. Even if you can't do that, or if you've archived a bunch of items and you can't change it, or if you're on an older version and you can't do it, that kind of thing, the answer is to pick a time that you're going to make the change. Okay, so maybe you do it at the start of the next season. You can enter those new department codes, and as you start to write purchase orders, put those in there. But remember something, that the department class subclass structure is yours to service and yours to figure out. It isn't up to anybody else to figure out. So if you're not happy with it, if it doesn't reflect how you go to the marketplace and buy, then then it doesn't work for you. Your department class subclass structure should reflect how you buy in the marketplace. Okay? All right. I have one more here. Hang on one second. Okay, this one says how. Okay, the question is how soon after the goods have been received do you recommend the first markdown? I usually recommend that we take our first markdown somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks if we have not received, I'm sorry, between 8 and 10 weeks if we haven't received at least a 50% sell-through. The real goal I have for you, by the way, is to sell 50% of the goods within the first 30 days of receipt. And why do I think that? Well, mostly, if you're going to mark it up, you know, if you're going to take a 2 times or 2.5 times markup on the goods that come in, I'd at least like to be able to pay for them within 30 days because that's usually when the bill is due, right? So I want to make sure we get that kind of sell-through early on. Okay. All right. Let's see if there's any more questions in the queue here. Give me one second. Okay. Okay. Alex, I think that's it for the questions. If you're still there.
I am here. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dan, and very much looking forward to your session the day before the Dubai Summit and the summit itself.
Yes, absolutely. So again, the summit the summit is Thursday, December 10th. The webinar I'm doing, I just want to fix this right now. I apologize about that. Is actually Wednesday, December 9th. So that's the day of the seminar. The Retail Pro Conference is December 10. You really want to attend both of these events. So there you go. Thank you, Alex, and thanks to everybody at Retail Pro. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to my friends in Dubai, and I look forward to meeting you all in person.
Thank you, Dan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.